Hello, and welcome to Feature History. In this series I will be presenting parts of history I feel are interesting and aren't taught nearly enough. I'll read stories, discuss details, and explain situations with hopefully well-edited videos to enhance entertainment and educational value to you, the dear viewer. In this first episode I'll be entailing the life of Austrian commando Otto Skorzeny. Born in 1908 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Skorzeny was doomed to a hard childhood. With the outbreak of World War I and the eventual loss of the war, his family was beset with troubles. It is on record that Skorzeny once complained to his father of their austere lifestyle, to which his father replied, "There is no harm in doing without things. It might even be good for you not to get used to a soft life." These words would stick with Skorzeny. In his youth, he also took up fencing, and in one of his personal duels was smitten and left with his signatory scar. Skorzeny later claimed that the knowledge of pain he learnt in fencing taught him to not be afraid in combat. Skorzeny was also an early supporter of the Nazi Party, and in 1931 joined the Austrian Nazi Party and played a small part in the Anschluss, the peaceful annexation of Austria into the Third Reich. With the start of World War II, Skorzeny left his job as a civil engineer and volunteered for service in the Luftwaffe, but he was told he was too tall at 6'4", or 1.92 meters, and too old, 31 at the time. He then decided to instead join Hitler's bodyguard regiment, the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, as an officer cadet. He served in France, Belgium, the Balkans, and the Eastern Front, where he achieved distinction and rose through the ranks. While serving on the Eastern Front, though, Skorzeny was struck in the back of the head by shrapnel from an explosive. He refused any kind of extensive first aid and rejoined his unit as soon as possible. A few hours later, though, his health deteriorated and he was hospitalized. It was here he was awarded his first Iron Cross, and while wounded in Berlin, invested himself in studying unconventional warfare and guerrilla tactics. He forwarded these ideas to High Command. Skorzeny's proposals were accepted, and he was appointed commander of the newly created SS Jagdverband 502. It was in this brigade he would accomplish some of his most famous feats. His first operation was to coordinate guerrilla fighters in Iran, but this was largely unsuccessful. After that, in 1943, he carried out Operation Oak, the mission to rescue Benito Mussolini. He was personally selected by Hitler, amongst others, to undertake this mission. Mussolini was being held prisoner in a hotel on the top of a mountain. His liberation was going to be difficult. It would have to be elaborate. An attack plan was formulated by General Kurt Student, Harold Morse, and Skorzeny. Skorzeny and other elite German commandos flew gliders out to the mountaintop. The garrison was bewildered by this sight and failed to react. Flying with them was Italian General Fernando Soletti, who was to order the garrison to stand down. They complied, and Skorzeny met with Mussolini and escorted him out of his remote prison without a single shot being fired. Skorzeny became famous in Germany for his accomplishments and was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. Later came Operation Long Jump, an alleged operation to eliminate the Big Three: Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Franklin Roosevelt. The mission was unveiled by Soviet counterintelligence, but Skorzeny and many others dismissed the operation as it had never existed, and that the leak was only Soviet propaganda. Skorzeny continued to carry out missions to some extent of success, but his last operation for the Third Reich is quite infamous. During the Battle of the Bulge in 1944, Skorzeny rounded up about 24 of his own men that were proficient in English, and dressed them in captured US uniforms, and equipped them with US weaponry, jeeps, and even panzer tanks repainted to look like the US tanks. These disguised troops went behind enemy lines and would open fire upon Allied regiments and cause disruption and confusion amongst the Allied front. Several of the troops captured reported that Skorzeny was using this distraction to get to Paris and assassinate Dwight D. Eisenhower. This was a lie, but the Allies believed it, and so Eisenhower spent his Christmas in isolation. Skorzeny became infamous for this, and he became known as the most dangerous man in Europe. And Eisenhower made sure that wanted posters with his face on them would be plastered amongst Allied camps. With the fall of Germany, Skorzeny was captured. He was held as a POW for more than 2 years prior to being tried as a war criminal at the Dachau trials in 1947 for his actions during the Battle of the Bulge. He was impossible to convict though, seeing as Allies knew that through his conviction a precedent would be set, and they'd have to sentence their own special forces by the logic. They also could not prove Skorzeny ever did actually order his men to fight, in US uniforms. He was detained at an internment camp until July 1948, where he escaped with the assistance of 3 former SS officers. Skorzeny, though, claimed that the US had faked his escape as to allow them to recruit him. Skorzeny was in high demand. Many secret services wanted to use his skills against their enemies.
You must have been approached since the war by other nations to indulge in military activities of the kind you indulged in during the war. Is this correct?
Yes, this has happened, yes, exactly. And there is a lot of countries which oppose.
Would you name some of the countries?
Oh, I can name, for instance, United States of America.
They
were nearly the first one
Is
to
that
propose
so?
something, yes.
What did they want you to do?
Oh, some special work.
On September 11th, 1962, a German scientist vanished, Heinz Krug, who had been under the employ of the Egyptian government. He had been at his office, and now he was gone. Mossad, the infamous Israeli secret services, was suspected. With 1948's Arab-Israeli War in living memory and tensions building up to the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel had made stopping German scientists working with Egypt a top priority. As you see, those German scientists were working on a rocket program, and not the kind that sends a man to the moon. For several months, Krug and other German scientists had been receiving threatening messages that were intended to apply pressure on them to leave Egypt. This had worked for other scientists, but Krug was most adamant on staying in Egypt, so of course, Mossad didn't like this very much. Mossad though needed a man who knew these scientists, someone these scientists could trust. They needed a Nazi. Now, Mossad had previously been chasing down Nazi war criminals who had escaped justice and kidnapping them, bringing them to Israel, and sentencing them, most often to death. Skorzeny at the time was living in Spain, which was rather tolerant of Nazis, given that Spain was still at this time a fascist country. Skorzeny lived in a villa with his wife, Ilse von Fichtenstein. They frequented a bar quite often. 2 Mossad agents, disguised as a German couple, entered the bar. They talked with Skorzeny and his wife, and said they had been robbed earlier in the night. The conversation continued and got somewhat flirtatious in areas. Ilse invited the couple to stay the night at their villa, considering they had no passports or money. The couple gladly accepted. Upon entering Skorzeny's villa, Skorzeny, the charming host, pulled a gun on the couple. He said, "I know who you are, and I know why you're here. You're Mossad, and you've come to kill me." The man unflinchingly responded, "You are half right. We are Mossad, but if we had come to kill you, you would have been weeks ago." "Or maybe," Skorzeny said, "I would rather just kill you." The woman interjected, "If you kill us, the ones who come next won't bother to have a drink with you. Our offer to you is just for you to help us." Skorzeny was intrigued, but the Mossad agent's offer of money did not interest him. He had enough. Skorzeny instead told him that he wanted his name removed from the famous Vienna-based Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal's list. He was told to consider it done. Skorzeny killed Heinz Krug and carried out other missions for Mossad. Once Hitler's favorite commando had turned into an Israeli assassin. Skorzeny was declared denazified in absentia, which allowed him to come out of hiding. He published memoirs and did interviews up until his death in 1975, age 67. Like an awful lot of grand people, he died a very ungrand death. He died of cancer. His funeral was attended by many German military veterans who did not hesitate to give the one-armed Nazi salute to say goodbye.